Hey there, it's the real Jason Duncan. I've got a special announcement for you really quick. I am hosting the Exit Lifestyle Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, February 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2022. You don't want to miss it. Go to theexitlifestyle.com to learn more.
I love organized chaos. So it's always coming at me, but I deflect it by having really great teams and really great people around me. I do not do business with people that I get heebie-jeebies from or have any thought of there's something going on behind their eyeballs, because I can sniff it a mile away now. And that's really how I cannot express how important it is to surround yourself with the proper people that align with where your values are. It's really, really important.
Your network is your net worth.
I like that.
You got it. Your network of people around you is directly correlated to your net worth. You are the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most, whether that's their financial earning ability, the amount of what they know about the world, what their worldview is. And I love what you just said there, because it reinforces that concept that your network is your net worth. And you are so right.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
Welcome back to another edition of The Root of All Success with me, the real Jason Duncan. Thank you for being here. I've got a great guest for you today, and I love it when I'm able to interview very successful female entrepreneurs. They're just so fascinating to find out how all entrepreneurs were able to achieve success. But I especially enjoy talking to female entrepreneurs because they're harder to find. And you'll see in the show today, I actually ask her about that. I ask her, why is it that it's harder to find the female entrepreneurs who are successful? And she has a great answer to that question. I'm not going to ruin it. I'll let you listen to the rest of the show. I want to say a couple of things before I introduce our guest, Claudia Harvey, to the show today. But first of all, thank you for listening to the show, whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether you're watching it on YouTube or C-Suite TV, no matter where you're watching this or listening to it, I want to say thank you. I also I have a request. If you could please go and leave a review and let us know how we're doing. Tell us that if we're 5-star, leave us a 5-star. If you can't do a 5-star, send me an email and let's talk about how I can make the show better. Because the more people that leave reviews, the higher we get in the rankings. And then we end up being in front of more people just like you to give you value so that you can learn how you as an entrepreneur can be successful. So let me thank you for watching or listening. Thank you for that. And then also thank you in advance for going and leaving that review. I know every podcaster asks you to do that, but it really, really is important. So if you could take some time to do that, I would appreciate it. All right, let me introduce you to today's guest. I've got a lady by the name of Claudia Harvey. She's a global entrepreneur. She's an inventor. She's an inspirational speaker. She's a philanthropist. She's the CEO of Dig It Apparel, which you're going to find out that she didn't start until her mid-40s. So it's not too late for you to start as an entrepreneur. So she's got a great story about how she became an entrepreneur with Dig It Apparel. She's the co-founder of BG Wealth Group. And she's got a fantastic story about what she's doing with BG Wealth Group and how she's buying other companies, investing in other companies, and continuing to grow wealth. And on the heels of her success as an entrepreneur in her own right. She's also a contributing author to several number one bestsellers like America's Leading Ladies, Empowering Women to Succeed, and a book called The Balancing Act. And what she is going to talk about in the bulk of her story is how she took some time off from her corporate career because she needed more balance in her life. And then her time off ended up starting Dig It Apparel. That ended up going on to Dragon's Den in Canada, because she's from Canada, our version of that Shark Tank here in the United States, but she went on Dragon's Den and got a deal with Kevin O'Leary. And she's going to tell the story about how that happened and how it doesn't always pan out the way that the television show seems to make it for all of us. There's a little bit of different nuance in there. So you're going to love hearing the story of Claudia Harvey today. So I want to welcome to the show, The Root of All Success, Claudia Harvey. Claudia, welcome to the show. I'm really, really glad you're here. I'm honored that you're coming all the way from Canada by Zoom to be on the show today.
It's my pleasure, Jason. It's really, really great to be here. I really wish we could be in person, but this is the next best thing.
Well, I know that when we originally were introduced through C-Suite, because that's how both of us met each other. This podcast is syndicated on the C-Suite Radio Network. We met through the events through C-Suite. You were really game to come to Nashville, and I was honored that you were going to come to Nashville. But of course, the ongoing pandemic and the COVID restrictions and the nuttiness that we're all dealing with just made it make more sense to do this by Zoom today. So either way, I'm honored that you're here, and to talk to someone like you is really good. And I'll say this before I get into asking you questions on the show. One of the things that I love doing is talking to very successful entrepreneur women. And I talk to men and women on the show all the time, but I have a harder time finding the women to really focus in on. It's not that they're not there. They're just harder to find. You guys are a little harder to find.
I think it's because we work really hard and our heads are down. Maybe that's it.
Well, I had the pleasure of speaking with another very, very successful entrepreneurial lady the other day on the show. And I told her the same thing. She had a very similar response. So congratulations to you for all your success. So I want to ask, kind of get things kicked off today, Claudia. What was your original entrepreneurial thing? Like, what did it start as a child? Were you an adult? When was it? Because I know you're raising a family now and you've got very successful businesses. You've done business with people like Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. But way back when, how did entrepreneurship enter your life? Oh,
that's a really great question. No one's ever asked me that before. I think in retrospect, I grew up with a very entrepreneurial household. So my mom and my dad both were entrepreneurs and business owners. My mom had a couple of hair salons in the small city that we were living in. And my parents were German, and my dad took tourists from Germany across Canada on tours. And I think we just lived and breathed at the dinner table what entrepreneurship was. They talked about receivables. They talked about great clients, bad clients. Oh my God, this happened to me today. So I think I just lived and breathed it when I was a little girl, and it just became part of our lifestyle, because some days it's craft dinner and some days it was steak. And now, of course, I understand why, but at the time I'm like, oh, great, it's craft dinner today. Yay. So it probably started right back then.
So I didn't know you were German. Do you speak German?
I do not. When I was a small girl, my parents only spoke German to me. And apparently I went to school speaking German in grade 1 and nobody would speak to me. So my parents dropped German. So I don't speak German anymore, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to say to you, the only thing I know in German, not because you will understand it, but if any listeners happen to hear me say this, they'll know what I'm saying. Du bist ein wunderschönes Mädchen.
No idea.
It means you are a very beautiful woman. That's the only thing I know how to say.
That's great. I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, it's true. It's true. But not only do I know, that's the only thing I know how to say. It's true. But there was a guy in my senior year of high school who was from Mülheim, Germany, who was here as an exchange student. His name was Sebastian, and we became really good friends the year that he was here. He lived in the same neighborhood as host family. And I said, I want you to teach me how to say that. And he did. And it stuck with me all these years. And occasionally I get to pull it out.
That's hilarious. That's great.
So your parents were entrepreneurs in their own right, hair salons, doing tours. But when did you take that leap or that step into entrepreneurship? Because I think based on what I know about your story is that you really spent a lot of time in the corporate world before you entered entrepreneurship. Is that true? true?
Yes, very true. My parents, even though they were entrepreneurs, they came from the Depression era. So they grew up in the Depression and World War II. My parents have passed away. They passed away over 10 years ago now. So they were older when they had my brother and I. They were in their 40s when they had us. So money was very, very, very important to them. And I grew up thinking that, wanting that, and being trained to want it. And corporate world was where I was pushed to do. It was not, don't do this, don't do that. It's like, go make money. And corporate was where to make money. And even honing that further, being in sales on the outside, customer facing, was where you made money in corporate, because you got the commissions and you've got the compensation that meets you doing a very good job when you're bringing business into the corporate world. So I became a salesperson and worked in the finance and insurance industries. And I did that for years and years until I was really, really tired and really, really stressed and stretched to the limit, and not feeling I was raising 3 kids and not feeling I was doing anything really well because I was too stretched, too thin. So it was, long story short, it was only when I was 44 did I actually become an entrepreneur and take that step to leaving the corporate world and becoming an entrepreneur.
So like last year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been a couple of years. I'll say 2.
So listen, I didn't know that obviously about your story, but I think what that is an encouragement to the listeners and the viewers to know that you don't have to get started early. There are people who get started much, much later in life. You spent a couple of decades in the corporate world before you entered entrepreneurship and have been wildly successful. And I think about the things I see on Instagram or LinkedIn where it talks about, I think it was Colonel Sanders who didn't start KFC until he was in his 80s. And there's the actor, I can't remember his name. Who's the guy that played in Star Wars, Chewbacca and Han Solo?
Yeah, right. I don't know the actor's name, but I know who you're talking about.
Didn't he start later? I don't know. But there are a lot of people who've been very successful in their own respective fields who started later in life. And I think that your story is really encouraging for people that are listening to go, well, I'm 40, 44, 45. I haven't started anything yet. What can I do? I actually had a guy I was talking to not too long ago who I don't know how old he is. I'm going to guess probably mid to late 50s. And he was thinking, he's corporate guy. And he's like, I want to start a business, but I think I'm too late. I said, no, you're not. You're not too late. So was Dig It Apparel, was that your first business thing?
Yeah, it was the first step into the entrepreneurship world. And I didn't announce to the world that I had started Dig It. So my children... So I left the corporate world not to start business. I left the corporate world to find balance in my life. And I assumed when I left corporate that I would just, regroup for 6 months, take a break, and then find a corporate job that was more suitable to my lifestyle, which had 3 kids, and not be as stressed and probably just, I was probably burnt out. So in that gap, that's when I started Dig It. And it was created from an idea of a barbecue on a Labor Day weekend and over beers. And my business partner at the time and I created Dig It because of the need for us in the marketplace. And fast forward 18 months, I didn't tell anybody I started Dig It because people would be like, Dig It, for the listeners, Dig It is a company that started nail protective glove for women. So it protects manicures in the garden, and we have an industrial design patent with a pillow top protector. I won't give that finger, pillow top protector in the patent in the fingertip. And that was the defining feature. And it was because I loved being in the garden, and my business partner at the time loved being in the garden, and we would be destroying our hands going back to work on Mondays. And it was a aha idea. It's like, they should create that. And then I was not working. I was with my kids. So I said, well, why don't we create that? So in between drop off and pick up between kids going to school, I created Dig It. And I created the infrastructure of Dig It, the website, like all of that, everything. But I did not tell anybody because I have a pair of gloves here. So I'm going to show them. This is what Dig It looks like. My very first glove. So inside is a pillow top protector inside each fingertip. And I didn't want people to say, left your corporate world, you left your job to sew gloves in your living room. Like what? And that's exactly not what I was doing. So
Dig It Apparel, you doing it on the sly, kind of in the background, but it was successful in spite of the fact that you were telling everybody about it. You were doing this on your own, kind of nobody knows what's going on. How did you get introduced to Kevin O'Leary? Because isn't that part of the story?
Yeah, that was the leap of me telling people that I was actually an entrepreneur. That's when I started labeling myself as an entrepreneur, because 18 months, it took about a year to part-time to create the business, create the actual glove, 5 focus groups with women. We took our time, right? There was no hurry to do it. And so we took our time and made sure we did it right, created the website, shopping cart, the trademarked, all that. We did it right because I knew how to do that because of my business experience. And my business partner at the time said we should go on Dragon's Den, which was the #1 show in Canada, which is your equivalent Shark Tank. And Kevin O'Leary, for some people who don't know, is Canadian. He actually started on Dragon's Den. So we were 6 weeks into the launch of our business, and we had, I think, $12,000 in sales, and that's it, when we actually went on stage in front of the dragons. And that's how I met Kevin O'Leary, with standing in front of him, pitching my product and my glove.
Wow. So, and all the people that I've interviewed on this show, I have not interviewed anybody who's been on Shark Tank, or Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
That's cool. I knew that that was part of the story, but I didn't really know that you were actually live in front of him. So tell me about that experience. What was that like when they reached out to you, or did you reach out to them and said, "Hey, I want to be on the show"? How did it originate? Back
in that time, and that was about 10 years ago now, there's a cattle call for anybody that has an idea to pitch, and you pitch to the producers of the show. You don't pitch in any way to the talent, to the sharks or the dragons. You have to get past a certain number of hurdles first, and they pick you because you have a good business idea or your entertainment. So it's like, my business partner pitched the idea to the producers because I was quite hesitant, because being on a show like that, you can be decimated in front of national TV. And reputation means a lot to anybody. So I was very hesitant. So she pitched to the producers. We got through the hurdle when she called me and she said, "We're going on Dragon's Den." And I'm like, okay, one question: are we entertainment or are we actually a viable company? So it was. Yeah. So it was a surreal time in life. It was great.
So you actually get on the television show, and you're standing there in front of the dragons, or as we would refer to them, the sharks. So you get, and the dragons or the sharks, you're standing in front of them and you do your pitch. So did you end up getting a deal live on the show, or was it kind of after the fact? What happened there? Yeah,
we did get a deal. What aired was 9 months later. So we taped on stage. We knew we had the deal, but we couldn't tell anybody that we had the deal. So this was still in the time that I didn't even tell people I had a business. Wow. So I was very, very quiet. And when we knew that we had the deal, because we got the deal on stage, but we didn't even know when we were going to air. So it was 9 months later we aired. And through that process, the legal process happens. So the due diligence happens and the lawyers talk, and then we create the shareholder agreement and all of that. So we did a deal with Kevin on stage, and it was aired. That deal was aired, but that's not actually what the deal was post Dragon's Den. Right. And it was a whole different deal post Dragon's Den.
Yeah, I think based on, I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank here in the US. My wife and I actually watch it a lot, which is interesting because she's not in the business at all, but she really enjoyed. We watched that and The Profit with Marcus Lemonis. I don't know if you guys watch it on CNBC, but we all love watching those shows. But what I know about them is that a lot of times the deals that end up on the show usually change. So what you're doing is verifying what I thought probably was the truth. So Kevin O'Leary is or was a business partner in Dig It?
Yeah. He started in 2010 with us. I guess, 2010, we signed the deal. And then Dig It bought him out in 2015. He had gone into Shark Tank at that time, has left Dragon's Den, left Canada. And the reason that a lot of people go on to a show like that is for the publicity, of course. So we didn't see a lot of Kevin over the years. And, he's off doing his thing and that's great, but we were able to use his name. So at that point in time at 2015, he was never coming back to Canada. He was never coming back to Dragon's Den. We would never be able to get aired back on Dragon's Den and, the success stories, because he was gone. The talent was gone. So amicably, we separated. He stayed down in the United States, and I then sold his shares to my current business partner, and he then bought the first business partner out. So there's been some shuffling going around with partnerships, which is great. That's also part of growing a business.
That's right. Now, Digit's not the only thing you've got. You've got BG Wealth Group that you're part of now. So what does BG Wealth Group do?
BG Wealth Group is BG stands for Beyond Growth, and I consider us a miniature Berkshire Hathaway. Speaking of people creating businesses later in life, Warren Buffett only started Berkshire Hathaway post 58. And I consider us a small Berkshire Hathaway because we have interests in, obviously, Digit is a sister company of BG Wealth Group. We have real estate holdings. We have restaurant holdings, franchisees, and a lot of the McDonald's model is how we build our wealth in the restaurants, because we buy the land and then we put the restaurants in and put the franchisees in. All of that has been created since 2018. So I started in Digit. Kevin left. Craig Dunkerley, my business partner, came in. And then he asked me to join him in his company, which was Blackthorn Group at the time. And we rebranded to BG Wealth Group. And that small company has gone in a very big way.
Wow. So this late bloomer entrepreneur, Claudia Harvey, starts at 44 and does it kind of on the slide back behind the scenes, spends a couple of 18, 24 months dealing with that, ends up with a billionaire business partner, and launches a brand around a pretty cool idea. And I would encourage people to go to your website for Digit. What is the website, by the way? I want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, it's digitapparel.com. So DIGIT apparel.com.
All right. So the gloves are pretty cool. You wear the gloves, you can dig around in the dirt and not screw up your nails. I know I'm always concerned about that. But that, and then you take that and you go into a whole new thing of building wealth. So what is it that you at BG Wealth are focused on? Is it taking other investors and doing a return for people, or is it just an internal, this is what we do to make wealth?
A bit of both. In fact, the business model of BG Wealth Group is really rinse and repeat, finding a successful business model and then doing it well, tweaking it, and then repeating that business model. So Craig had started in real estate holdings in Detroit when Detroit was bankrupt, and he bought property very, very low cost, and that property value has increased significantly. We've taken that business model and replicated in a small city up here in Canada called Owen Sound, which is poised as well for amazing growth because of some government funding that's in that region. So we did it as well. And then buying into other people's businesses. So we bought the first pizzeria that it's called Village Pizzeria, and we're rebranding to Flame and Bricks Pizzeria, but we only bought one, also in small town Canada. And we bought it in December 2020, and we're now 11 months later. So we're in November as we're chatting here, and we now have 7 locations. And we've also started Coach's Burger Joint as well. And so we now have 2 franchise businesses. And then Digit, this is really cool. Can I tell you something really cool that I'm quite proud of?
Please.
Okay. So Digit pitched on Dragon's Den in 2009, and we pitched to billionaires, and these people are successful. In 2020, Digit bought a company. So the pitcher became the investor, and we bought a company called Sun Care, and we launched a product internationally that they had, which is also a patent product. So I felt very proud about that personally, because over the course of years, I learned from the best. Like I learned from Kevin O'Leary. I watched how he worked, and I partnered with Craig and watched how he worked. So surrounding yourself with amazing people to then advance where opportunities lie was great. So buying sun care was really cool. It was really cool. It felt so satisfying.
Well, I'm really intrigued, and I want to ask you some questions about the pizza place, for example. So you've got a very successful company in Digit that's selling apparel and gloves. You just revealed that you've got the sun care, which I remember looking that up. It's a really cool little invention about knowing when your sunblock is still working or not, right? That's what that is, which I think is very interesting. What's the website there so people can go take a look?
It's spotmyuv.com.
Yeah, Spot My UV. It's pretty interesting because you can put this little sticker on there or this little thing, and it tells you when your UV protection is faded and you need to reapply, which I think is really cool. So you got those two successful companies. You got BG Wealth. But when BG Wealth, as it's going, part of what you're doing is you're buying these other businesses. Mm-hmm. So my question is, so when you go and you don't reveal anything you're not able to share, but when you bought the pizza place, who's running that? Because you're very successful and you got other irons and other fires. How do you manage the time and balance the time and say, okay, I'm going to buy a pizza place a year ago and now I got 7. Who manages that and does the rebranding and make sure the managers are trained and the food prep is done correctly? Who's doing all that?
Yeah, not me. Trust me. I burn water when I boil it. So it's not me. It's the rinse and repeat and making sure that you have teams in every business that you're creating that already know the business. And then we bring our expertise in to make sure that business is successful. So Scott is our COO of that business, and he owned the pizzeria that we bought, and he's staying on for 3 years to make sure that he oversees it and making sure that it's staffed correctly and the secret sauce, because literally we have a secret sauce in the Village Pizzeria, and making sure that that's replicated but all of our business knowledge goes into the growing of the business. So we would never buy into a business unless we are very sure that business model is sound. And then we amplify it.
So is that what you, Claudia, are doing daily? Is you are overseeing the investments? Because it sounds to me like Digit's probably running pretty much on its own, automated with your team. You don't have to get involved, and probably the same with the sun care. But on the businesses, is that what you're call it your 40-hour work week, as you're paying attention to what's going on out there and looking for acquisitions and making sure things are running correctly? Is that what you're doing every day?
Yeah. I am CEO of Digit still. But my team, including the gentleman that had created Sun Care, they are now part of my team. So the 2 founders and inventors of the product are brilliant. They're biomedical engineers, and they are brilliant with standard operating procedures. So I've given them a lot of responsibility in Digit, so I can now focus on other things and grow other areas. And then it's mainly oversight and management of the opportunities that might be out there. We get pitched a lot. So it's really kind of cool. Like, we get pitched ideas, and we get pitched like, would you like to join our company? So we look at it and we vet it and we think about it. And again, being part of Kevin O'Leary's background, I watched how he vets companies. I was literally on the ground floor of him vetting us. And there is a formula to it. There really is. So oversight is really where I spend a lot of my time, and marketing development, making sure that each company intertwines with the whole branding of BG Wealth Group, and each company has its own brand as well.
I'm fascinated at people like you because of how you're building wealth through business acquisitions. So much so that just recently, the week of this recording, I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Patch Baker, who he builds his wealth through business acquisitions, very much like what you're doing with BG Wealth, although a little bit different focus. And part of my online membership that I do as training for entrepreneurs, called the Successful Entrepreneur, I do a monthly Entrepreneur Master Series where I take an expert and I talk about their expertise. And he and I spent 90 minutes just the other day talking about exactly what you're doing with BG Wealth. And I didn't know that was the BG Wealth story. And that's why I do the show. But he and I spent 90 minutes talking about how he owns a piece of 49 companies. He wants to own 1,000 companies.
Wow.
But what fascinates me about that is how does he manage that on a day in, day out? That's why I asked you a question, Claudia, because I want to know if you're out doing something else, how do you manage those businesses? And I love what you're doing because I am interested in investing in businesses. I own multiple businesses myself, but I want to go buy others. And honestly, I'm afraid. I'll admit it, I'm a little afraid of if I bite off this. Let's say if I bought a pizza joint, right? If I go buy a pizza joint, first of all, I know I'm not going to be making or deliver pizzas. I understand that, but how much of that time is it going to require of me to pull me away from hosting a podcast and coaching clients and doing speeches at events and conferences? So that's why I asked the question, because I want to know, well, how much does that require in your time? Because I'm selfishly interested in how you're pulling that off.
Yeah, it's. I have to say, it's busy. My life is very, very busy. My sister-in-law once told me that she thinks that I love chaos, but I love organized chaos. So it's always coming at me, but I deflect it by having really great teams and really great people around me. I do not do business with people that I get heebie-jeebies from or have any thought of there's something going on behind their eyeballs, because I can sniff it a mile away now. And that's really how I cannot express how important it is to surround yourself with the proper people that align with where your values are. It's really, really important.
Your network is your net worth.
Right. I like that.
You got it. Your network of people around you is directly correlated to your net worth. You are the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most, whether that's their financial earning ability, the amount of what they know about the world, what their worldview is. And I love what you just said there, because it reinforces that concept that your network is your net worth. Yes. And you are so right. I have a question for you. Sure. A very specific question. So this is the show is called The Root of All Success. And so I want to get down to the root of your success. So first of all, how would you define that word success?
I love that question. Success to me has changed over time. As I mentioned at the beginning part of our chat, success used to be money, 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 building money. And money was a be all and end all in my family's life to their success, not my success. And my definition of success has changed significantly over time. When I left my corporate world, I was making a lot of money. Like I was commission sales, and I'm good at sales. Like I have to say, I honed it. It was really what I did very well. So giving up that compensation obviously was redefining my definition of success. And I wanted to be more present with my young family. And that was really, really important to me. I figured if I had 3 kids and I'm not there and a nanny's raising them, that's not a good model. That wasn't my value system. So I was shifting my definition of success. And I have 3 words. Would you like to hear them? Please. Three words that define my success. So they are strength, balance, and harmony. And that is my definition of success. If I can live in strength, my life is harmonious. And everything I do is in our businesses I create, in my life, if I need to live in strength, balance, and harmony, because it's, then I have the foundation to grow in areas that I want to grow in, personally and in business. Strength,
balance, harmony. I love it. So with that as the definition, do you consider yourself a successful person?
Very good question. I think, the short answer, yes. The longer answer is, I think everybody evolves, and it's a continuity of evolution. And I like to hone that even further, that balance. Like, as I said, I'm organized chaos. Sometimes it's a wee bit too much. So having over time, as I start to get older, because, I'm only 29, but as I start to get older, I would like to do my business not from Toronto, but from Hawaii or a happy place. So hone it, balance my life even further, and define where I want to really be as a person in the later part of my career.
Well, I appreciate the transparency, and I ask that question of every guest on the show, and it's probably a 50-50 where I get people that immediately go, absolutely, 100% I'm successful. And then other people, they do what you did. They take a moment like, yeah, I am. And then there's more to it. So I think both come from the same place. Other people just have thought about it a little bit more fully, but I think that you are a successful person, at least from the outside looking in, which is why I invited you to be on this show to begin with. Well, let me share with you now as we kind of move into the back end of the show. One of the things that I discovered, and my listeners are very familiar with this, is over the last 3 to 5 years of casually interviewing very successful entrepreneurs, whether I'm at the club drinking a bourbon and smoking a cigar, talking to somebody, or I'm doing it on the show, I found that there are these 5 keys that every entrepreneur has used to unlock his or her success. And I want to see how these 5 keys, if they actually appeared in your story like they have in so many others. So the first key to success is passion. And I believe that every single entrepreneur who's successful used the key of passion to unlock success. But there's a caveat here. Passion is normally seen as emotional passion. I love it. Like for instance, I'm passionate about cars and motorcycles, although I've made no money. As a matter of fact, I've lost money in cars and motorcycles. But passion, the one side is emotional, and that is a contributing factor to success. But the actual key side of passion is the mental side of passion. And what passion actually means is willingness to endure. And that's why when we refer to the passion of the Christ, for example, it wasn't that he was excited to go to the cross and was joyful over it. It was, I am willing to endure, which is what the word passion actually means, for a greater cause. So in your story, Claudia, of success, do you see where you used that key to unlock your success as an entrepreneur?
100%. Absolutely. There have been times when I created Dig It from the early days where there were very, very strong obstacles and it would be a do or die with the business. And I'm like, there is no flipping way I'm letting this stop me, because I put too much blood, sweat, and tears into where I am right now already, that there's not going to stop me. And my goodness, there were certain times where it was very uncomfortable and very tenuous, but we got around it. Would you like an example of that?
Please.
This is, so I live in Toronto, and as many of you might know, Toronto is cold and like probably about 8 months of the year. As Kevin O'Leary once said, it's a frigid Arctic wasteland at times, but it's not that bad. But we're coming off of Dragon's Den. We have our first purchase order from a large retailer in Canada. We receive our gloves from what was our manufacturer at the time. And I opened the boxes and we have $30,000 worth of product. $30,000 to me at that point is 2010 is a lot of money, because that would equate to bringing in about $100,000, give or take. Right. So we opened the boxes. I opened the boxes in my warehouse in February, which is not heated. Look at all of these gloves and say 60% of them are not sellable. And I'm like, the fingers were off, the sewing was off. I was like, after I threw up on the floor, which I didn't, but it hit my gut like a ton of bricks. In order to meet this purchase order and requirement, which will then catapult the company further, it's the very first mass retailer, we had to go through 20,000 units of gloves, and which means 40,000 pieces separated out, match a right hand to a left hand to see what works, retag them, and get them out the door within 6 weeks. And then fired the manufacturer and find another manufacturer to keep the company live. And it is in the middle of February. I brought in people into this warehouse that I couldn't afford. And we sat for a month in an unheated warehouse with space heaters and in our down coats, retagging gloves, getting them out the door. And we got them out the door and we met our purchase order and we paid for the purchase order and we paid for everything, but we were $1,000 away from bankruptcy. This is coming off of Dragon's Den. And I was not going to let this manufacturer that was run by this big bombastic man tell me it's sellable. I'm like, crap, it's not sellable, dude. So I'm not, first of all, bye-bye, you're fired. And secondly, I'm not going to let you stop me. And that was very hard because I was really cold. It was a hard month.
That's such a great story. And I know that entrepreneurs who have achieved success, listen to the show, have similar stories because we've all suffer or endured through some terrible things where we're cleaning things up that shouldn't need to be cleaned up because other people didn't do their jobs. And I love that you've got that passion to push through and to endure because there's a greater thing on the backside of that. The next two keys, the first key is passion. The second two keys, or the second and third key, kind of go together, especially in your story, because I'm going to make an assumption. I know the answers to these, but I'm going to make sure is, first of all, being in the right place at the right time. There's always a key there to success. And then the third goes with it, which is knowing the right people. So I'm going to make a guess is that the place and the person or people that you met, certainly this is not isolated and the only ones that were keys, but being on Dragon's Den and having Kevin O'Leary was a good place and a right place, right time, and was the right people to help get you catapulted, but probably not the only place and not the only time that helped you get to success. Tell me a little bit more about how those two keys played to your success.
Again, 100%, because it's when you're going through hard times or difficult times, challenging times, then you go to your network to support you and lift you up. And if your network isn't there, or they're a bunch of complainers or a bunch of woe is meers, they're not going to help you get to the next level. So I surround myself with positive people that are solution-based, that can help you with a solution or tell you, what are you thinking? Stop being stupid. And you have their values and their background and their experience that you actually listen to them. They're not telling you something that is what you want to hear, is something that you need to hear. And I surround myself with those type of people. And I hopefully am that to other people as well. So yeah, 100%. Can I give you one more story about that? And it's also about endurance, but it's also about network and people. That same time that we were fulfilling those gloves in the warehouse and that same period of time, we had to get a bridge loan to meet the purchase order, pay for the purchase order, and then wait for our money to come in from the retailer. And I needed $30,000. $30,000 actually in retrospect seems to be a key number today, but I needed $30,000. And I went to my bank, went to my small business bank manager, and I had banked with this bank since I was 13 years old. I created my business bank with that bank relationship. So I had a personal bank relationship, now a business bank relationship. And I went to the small business manager and said, I need $30,000. And he said, he didn't research who I was. He didn't know my company. He didn't understand that I had just partnered with Kevin O'Leary. He said, my husband will have to sign the loan. And I'm like, what? That is not going to happen either, because it's an incorporated business. My husband doesn't own the business, and $30,000 is really a drop in the bucket compared to everything else. Now, back then it was a lot. So I went, thank you, no thank you, walked literally across the street to another bank that did not know me, had no relationship with me, went to the receptionist, said, I want to speak to a small business bank manager now. And they said, okay, this crazy lady. So they put me in touch with a woman, Katya, her name is, and she today is still my bank manager, my small business bank manager. She's now commercial because we're in commercial. And she said, we will help you. She researched me within 3 days, gave me a bank loan, and said, you have to leave your business bank relationship with your other bank, but we will support your business. And I'm like, you got it. So ended that bank relationship. And that woman has been integral in helping me finance my company.
I can't tell you, for those that are listening, how important a proper banking relationship is. A banker can bankrupt you, or a banker can set you free.
Yes.
I think those are and finding a banker that actually understands entrepreneurs and understands the plight of entrepreneurship, and that it doesn't sometimes make sense, but there's a huge payoff, is so good. And I'm really glad to hear, Claudia, in your story that a banker was instrumental in your success, because we need to hear that. Because generally speaking, I mean, we all make jokes about lawyers. and a lot of entrepreneurs make jokes about bankers because of the same kind of crap that is pulled, and they do stupid stuff that puts us in peril. I almost had a banker put me out of business one time. Yeah. And, but nevertheless, I found another one who saved the day, and he and I work on stuff together still to this day. So I love that you talk about the banker, and that's a little note to entrepreneurs out there.
Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Who do I need in my network? You need a banker. You need a
banker, and you need a lawyer, another really, really key person. And if they don't fit with your values or your personality, get another one. There's lots of them. There's lots of them.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to have people leave your network, because sometimes it's the time to leave. It's time to change, and people come and go in your life that you don't burn bridges, but it's time. It's like time to move on. Just like Kevin O'Leary, it was time to move on. He was going his separate way, and I was going my separate way. So it's okay. It's all right. It's good. Yeah.
So the last two keys, I'll talk about those. So we got passion, we got place, we got people. The last two are preparation and plan. So preparation is the know-how to pull off what you're going to be successful at. And then plan is, what is your plan to get the financial resources that you're going to need to do things? So I'm going to assume on the plan side that Dragon's Den was one of those big ways for you, because, hey, we're going to go pitch this. And if we get an investor, boom, we're off to the races because we have a financial backer. We've got good partnership. But preparation, I'm going to guess, Claudia, that the preparation for you to be so successful as an entrepreneur was the 2 decades that you spent in the corporate world before you launched into entrepreneurship. Yes. So what do you see as what prepared you to be successful? How did you prepare? And then what was your plan to get the financial resources?
Great questions. Yes, for sure. The corporate world was my learning ground of how to do the business. In my corporate life, I was in sales, I was in marketing, I was in operations, and I was in customer service. So I had all of those aspects, and I had worked with the senior staff in each of the companies. So I saw how the management worked, and that I internalized as standard operating procedures that I brought into Digit when I created Digit. Having started Digit, I still didn't know what I didn't know. And there were certainly things that when you become a business owner, a paycheck is different than being a business owner, because every single solitary cent as a business owner means something to you. 10 cents. If a tag is ripped off in a store, it almost is like visceral. That cost me 10 cents. It's so important. So the money and the business planning and the marketing planning are all intertwined. And I think about them in a triangle. So business planning is up here, and financial planning is here, marketing planning is here, and you cannot do a business plan without both of those as the foundation. So financial planning was really, really, really important. Initially, we put our own money into the business, but that dries up. Eventually a business owner cannot constantly put money into your own business. The business has to start making money, reinvest in the business, and then that spiral grows. You said that, part of being being off of Dragon's Den, we had the financial backing. Surprise, surprise, we did not. That the coming off of Dragon's Den on air is we received $50,000, but that is not what happened. We got a line of credit at an astronomical interest rate that we never took, but we were able to use his name in marketing. Uh-huh. So we had to figure out our own financials.
Nice. Well, and see, there it is. I mean, it doesn't always look the way it actually is. And I think so many people look at us as entrepreneurs and go, oh, they're so lucky. They were at the right place, the right time. They just happen to know the right person, and they got money just mailed to them in a mailbox somewhere. No, this is all strategic. You have to put yourself in the right place. You have to go out and meet the right people. And then even when the plan looks like you're going to have the money, you got to figure out a better way and a different way to get the money. Right. So I love that. Now, besides all of that, Claudia, besides all of your success with Digit and BG Wealth Group, you're also an author and contributing author and to several different books. Would you like to talk about how you got involved in that? Because that's a little bit different than just being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, people, as a story unfolded, and I was on speaking stages more and more because they wanted to hear about the story. And prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of international speaking and enjoying that a lot because I love helping people. I love the questions that you're asking because they're helping people with insight into how they can adapt to their own world. So I was invited to participate in a number of books as writing a chapter. And initially, my very first chapter that became an international bestseller was in empowering women to succeed. So I wrote a chapter in there and I thought, I don't need to do this because I'm not a writer. I'd never classified myself as a writer or an author. But again, convinced by the editor at the time, just try. And she helped walk me through how to write, which wasn't hard. Once you start, it's really not hard. And wrote that first chapter, and that became an international best-selling book. Wrote a couple other chapters in a couple other books that also became international bestsellers. And the last book that I participated in also had American leading ladies, and it had Oprah Winfrey, Melinda Gates, Mary Barra, some amazing, huge names. And I am in chapter 2 right after Oprah, who is chapter 1. So that's kind of cool.
Nice. And you've been on stage with some pretty amazing people too, like Tony Robbins and Victor Hansen, Bill Walsh, Pitbull, and some others. How did you end up on stage with those folks? Just
networking as well. Bill Walsh is a really great connection that I made probably back in 2013. And he is hugely connected to a lot of people. And he was my mentor when it came to speaking. And then he introduced me to opportunities and speaking and stages and different things. And I learned a lot from him as well. And then I learned a lot from a woman named Cindy Ashton. Cindy is on Broadway and she's an actress and a singer. So I started to hone my craft as almost like an actor on stage, but not. It's just owning the stage and owning the presence and making sure that it's amplified as well. Amplified is a word I love because you take an idea or you take a concept or you take an action and you amplify it. And I like that. That's my life.
Strength, balance, and harmony. That's the keys to success for you. That's how you define success. So now, as we finish the show up, I want to ask you to give some advice. So we've got people listening to the show, watching the show on YouTube, wherever they watch it. They are just starting out as entrepreneurs. They haven't reached the success that people like you have yet. They haven't been there yet. So what would you say to them? What would you say? Hey, this is my piece of advice as a very successful entrepreneur. This is what I want to tell you as someone who has not yet started their entrepreneurial journey.
I got so much pieces of advice. How much time do we have? I think the number one piece of advice is surround yourself with positive people. People that you can rely on, that can give you honest, real answers. Keep the naysayers at bay and research your idea or your concept very thoroughly before you enter it. Therefore, when you do tell somebody about it, they're not going to go, what? They're going to go, wow, that's really cool, because you have verified your idea before you spend a lot of money to launch it.
Well, I think that's great advice. And then I would think that another piece of advice that's insinuated by your story is that it's never too late to start. It's never too late to start. It's easy for me to say. Never too late to start. You've got a lot of people out there that are riding around in their cars right now listening to this podcast on the podcast player, and they're in their 40s or 50s or maybe later in their life, and they're thinking, I'm just relegated to the corporate career forever. But you, Claudia, are an inspiration to all those people to know that at 44, you can kind of take some time off to get more balance in your life, because that was what success was for you. And through just having good conversations and running ideas past each other, you decide to start a company that ends up being an international success, buying another company, international success, starting a wealth group that is now having international success across borders, right? Canada and the United States. And so I applaud you for your success. I'm very honored to have you on the show. It's been a great time talking with you. I wish we could have done it in Nashville here live and in person, but I'm still glad that we got to talk. So I'm going to give you the last word. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience, or how they can get in touch with you? Have anything you want to finish up with?
Well, like I said, network to me is massively important. Being on your podcast, Jason, has allowed me to enter into your world, and you have listeners that follow you. So I will say I am now in your network. Your listeners are in your network, so people can reach me, and I'm putting it out there. People can reach me if they need any assistance or any advice. My email address is C Harvey, so CHARVEY at bgwealthgroup.com, and just go onto our website. There's also a let's talk page. People can get to me if they need to get to me. So I'm putting it out there that if you need an ear, I'm there.
C Harvey at bgwealthgroup.com. So you can go take a look her up and go back and listen to the show again, hear all the details about her Dig It apparel and about the other things we've talked about today. BG Wealth Group, I think, is really interesting to me too. I want to go take a deeper look at that. But Claudia, it's been an honor having you on the show. Thank you for visiting with me today on The Root of All Success. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Jason. And that time went so fast. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Well, there you have it. Another very successful entrepreneur, this time a female entrepreneur. I love talking to female entrepreneurs who are successful about how she unlocked success. And just like every single time we talk about on the show, it's these same 5 keys to success of passion, being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, having the right preparation, having the right plan. Those 5 keys, just like they unlocked it for dozens and dozens of other people I've interviewed on the show, they unlocked it for her too. And what I think is cool about her story is that she did it, late in life is not the right term because 44 is not old, but later in her career to start a company. And not only did she start that company, but went on to acquire another company and then start another company. And it was fascinating to hear her talk about that story. I want you to think about where you are in your life. Use those words of balance, strength, and harmony that she talked about in success. If you don't have that, what can you do to get there? One of the things that we talked about in the show today was my membership program called The Successful Entrepreneur. And I want to invite you as a listener to join this online learning community. In the Successful Entrepreneur online learning community, it's only $55 a month to get access to live coaching and training with me almost on a weekly basis. I do an Ask Jason Live Q&A once a month where you can log in and ask me any question you want about entrepreneurship. It's like getting me as your personal business coach. There's also a training that I do every week or two called Success Lectures, where I spend an hour just digging into a topic. One of the topics I've got coming up very soon, which will be in the past after you listen to this show, I'm going to be talking about how millionaires focus their time and manage their time. And because there's some certain tricks that I've learned over the years on how people who are millionaires actually do this. And I will share those types of trainings with you as part of the online learning community. And then the thing that I actually talked about on the show today is I do an Entrepreneur Masters series where I bring in an entrepreneur once a month and we spend 90 minutes talking about his or her unique skill set and how we can use that and tap into that skill set to better our lives as an entrepreneur. You get all of that for only $55 a month, but there's more. You also get 20% off all online courses that I provide through Results University. You get 10% off any of the cohorts that I lead in the group coaching, where I do live group coaching every 90 days with a group of entrepreneurs. You get 10% on that. You get access to the online forums and communication channels. There's tons of value, and it's only $55 a month. If you could hire a coach, a very successful coach, for $55 a month, why would you not do that? So go to therealjasonduncan.com/TSE, as in the successful entrepreneur. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/TSE. Sign up today. I know you're going to love it. It's going to provide tons of value. And if you need anything from me, just reach out to me through my website. Well, thank you for listening today. I truly appreciate it. I will see you next time when I talk with yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, I'm the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we invite you to visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Take charge of your business. Grow it from great to incredible. Join us again next time here on The Root of All Success.